everyone! Today I'm gonna be painting some characters with the Ohuhu alcohol markers. I received these a while back, so I've already had some time to experiment and figure out what works for me. So today I thought I'd take you along as I paint. I'm gonna share what I think of these and give you some tips on how I use them for my illustrations. I'm gonna be using the Honolulu set with 120 basic colors and the Kala set with 60 illustration tones. When I unboxed these, I was so excited for all the soft and vibrant colors. It turned out a lot of them are actually darker and more saturated, but for the price and the amount of colors you get, I still think they're amazing. The Honolulu markers have a brush tip, and I use that one for pretty much everything. And especially for blending colors, I think it works perfectly. You can see how I'm using it here to paint some blush on the cheeks and the nose. If you want softer blending, you have to work quick and layer your colors while the ink is still wet. As soon as I fill in the face, I would go over the cheeks with the same color and repeat them a couple of times. This will make them more saturated, and because the paper is still wet, it will disperse the ink more evenly. And if you want the effect to be more exaggerated, you can just go over them again with one shade darker. On the other end, the Honolulus have a slim board nib, and the Kala markers have a chisel nib, which I think is pretty similar. I love both of these for portraits and rougher work. This one is a study of Chris Holm because she's amazing. The Kala markers have a fine tip instead of the brush, and I guess this largely comes down to personal preference, but I'm not a huge fan of the fine tip. You can't block in colors with it, and it's also not good for precision either, so I just don't know what to do with it, honestly. But that's okay for me because the Kala set has some really beautiful softer colors. There are a lot of darker tones in the Honolulus, and they're still very beautiful, but they just don't work well for my style. I love doing black line art in my illustrations, and if I use darker colors, it doesn't work well because it gets hard to read. That's why I usually reach for more pastel and lighter tones in my work. That being said, if your style is more painterly, you might find more application for these than me. I forgot to show you in the beginning, but these are all the colors that I'm using for this piece. I wanted to have really muted neutrals for the hair and lips, because I picked 2 shades of green for the shirt, which would already be quite a lot of color. If your entire illustration is primarily composed of more saturated colors, they kind of lose their impact. I prefer the majority of my colors to be more muted and pair them with just a couple more saturated tones. I think this creates a lot more balance and harmony in your art. So for the lips, I found this muted soft brown. I was initially a little skeptical about it, but it actually worked pretty well. I had some problems with the hair because I didn't want to repeat the lip color, but I also didn't want to make it a darker brown because my lines are already brown. So in the end, I settled for pink, and I think it works great. Something I actually love about the fact that I don't have the perfect colors is that this pushes me to make different decisions than I normally would. If this was digital, I would probably make the lips more desaturated and the hair almost white or like this milky pink color. But I've already done that before in past illustrations, so I really appreciate the challenge of having to make it work with what I have. I think such limitations, as frustrating as they may be, can also expand your creativity and help you discover things that you would never do otherwise. The swatch cards included in these sets are very helpful and a total lifesaver. Just keep in mind to repeat each color twice when filling them in. because whenever you paint something, you would naturally repeat brushstrokes for better blending, and you will end up with colors darker than the swatches, which can be misleading if you only painted a single layer when swatching. Like I said, I think these are very helpful, but I do have one issue with them, and it is that you have a ton of colors on a single piece of paper, and this can make designing color schemes a little bit challenging because you can't really isolate a few colors to see if they really work well together. So what I do as a result is create little thumbnails and paint the same color scheme over and over again with little tweaks until eventually I like it. A potential solution to that problem is to create your own swatches, but put each color on its own card. I did that a while ago with my Copics, and I found it super helpful to be able to put together the colors that I plan on using and see if they actually go well. Along with the markers, Ohuhu also sent me their mixed media pad, and I think it works quite well. The paper is nice and thick and has this subtle texture to it. If you enjoy pure white paper, you're gonna love it. But I personally prefer warmer toned paper, so for this piece, I'm using the Strathmore Marker Sketchbook. It's this soft ivory color, which I really love. When I first started using markers, I would often get patchy colors. So over time I learned that if you want even colors, you should work quick and always start from one side and move steadily across. Avoid the habit of outlining first, because by the time you start filling in with color, you get this overlap where the ink has dried, and this creates a darker band. I also repeat my brush strokes a lot as I go, so the paper absorbs the ink more evenly. I've noticed that lighter colors are easier to blend. Whenever I paint something dark, I always have to go over it a few times to get rid of all the streaks. This is something specific to my art style because I do rely on flat colors quite a bit, but if you tend to layer more colors anyway and have a more painterly style, I don't think it will be a problem for you. Ohuhu were kind enough to also send me this set of 8 fineliners in different sizes. I used them to ink this illustration in my last video, and overall I think they're perfect. But for this illustration, I'm actually using Prismacolor pencils. This is something new to me, but I tried it with another piece last night, and I absolutely love the softness of the lines. Whenever I use fineliners, I would naturally draw very slowly because I want to control my hand better. And because the lines are so clean and minimal, I have to be super careful. So for a change, I've been really enjoying using pencils. One thing I love about markers is how effortless they are to use. You can just grab a few and quickly color something in. You don't need to prep water cups or anything else like with traditional paint. You don't even have to know how to mix colors, which is what makes them so great for beginners too. I mean, learn your color theory, but these are just a great option for when you want to have some fun. After I received the markers, I decided to purchase the Ohuhu bamboo holder. I've been using these quite a bit, and I think it's super handy to have them on my desk. It definitely sparks your creativity, and I'm also much more likely to use them when they're right in front of me. I think this is a really good example of a piece where I can't use very dark colors because my line art here is not even black. And if you notice the skirt, that's about the darkest I can go before the color starts blending in with the line work. I actually even used a white pencil to add a little bit more dimension. I also used the white pencil on the face, in the corners of the eyes and around the nose and the lips. It adds these subtle and very soft highlights. I never would have reached or a white pencil if I had the exact color that I needed for the skirt. But it adds such a nice texture, which works especially great here because denim is a very textured material too. I honestly really love how much these markers have pushed me to mix in other mediums, and you often get really interesting and totally unexpected results. I put all of my Honolulu markers on the holder just for consistency, but I only reached for about a third of them. And I probably would have used more if I wasn't so allergic to violet and purple. I don't use too many of the warm colors because they're too strong and they just don't fit my art style that well. Looking at Ohuhu's website, I think the pastel set would be perfect for me, so I definitely want to purchase that one. But I'm also curious to play around with the saturated colors that I have and figure out how I can use them. I use a lot more of the Kala markers. Despite the lack of a brush nib, I use almost half of these. They contain some really beautiful warm colors and more pastel options overall. Anyway, this is how this illustration turned out. Now I'm going to quickly color in the illustration from my last video. I'm honestly not a huge fan of how the inking turned out. I love the design, but I totally lost the life of the sketch for some reason. But I promised to color it in this video, and now I feel bound by my words. For this one, I'm sticking to a warmer palette. I think I could have made some better color choices here, but it was getting dark while I was filming and I kinda had to rush it. I was going for a more monochromatic and warm color scheme. I made the jacket brown, and to balance things out, painted the skirt in this warm grey tone. Actually, the night before filming this, I made another version of this piece. I inked it all over again, but this time I tried making the lines thicker and looser to kind of make it less stiff. That's how I usually approach line work in my digital pieces, so I thought I'd give it a try. Initially I hated it, but now I think it's actually better than the one I'm painting here. I love the colors with the blue jacket more, and everything is overall more muted and more desaturated, which I think works better. So this has been my experience with the Ohuhu markers so far. Are these worth it? I think yes. I may not use all the colors, but after having these for a while now, I think they're wonderful, and they have inspired me to create so many things already. One of the biggest advantages is the amount of colors you get for the price. You probably wouldn't buy many of these individually because we all have our preferences, but you never know when you'll decide to give an unusual color a chance. I mean, I actually found a violet I liked for the first time in my entire life. This can shift your art style in new ways, which I think is incredibly valuable. And one of the greatest benefits for me is that their affordability takes away the fear of wasting expensive art supplies, something I believe we are all too familiar with. I don't feel as precious about these, which makes experimenting so much easier. And I feel like that freedom leads to more and therefore better art in the long run. Let me know which version of this piece you like more because I'm really curious. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.